Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings MLB plays, the Benny's Bats edition for Monday, April 18th. It's only a 7-game night slate that we have to talk about here, and I just want to make sure everybody knows up front, there's a couple pitching changes that we'll talk about. I actually had a rough time doing some of the research this morning because 2 or 3 of the guys who were the scheduled starters that I looked at last night are not going to be the guys that are starting today. So I'll mention it to you as we go through everything. As of now, I think we got all the guys who are, slated to start as of 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time on Monday. So obviously there could be some more changes that come, but, for the most part, I think this is right. So let's get started with the first game. We got the New York Mets going up against the Philadelphia Phillies. Noah Syndergaard, Thor, on the mound for the New York Mets. Left-handed bats have been better against him with a 237 batting average and a 1.17 whip, which isn't good. That's not really like somebody we want to target against. They've just been the better of the two sides against him. He's been absolutely lights out, almost unhittable to right-handed bats, so we're really not looking at any of them. This Philly team is not a very good offense, but they do have 2 left-handed bats that I guess we could mention. Neither one is really somebody who's high up on the list because, again, I don't really want to target guys against Syndergaard, so if you're looking for anybody, Odubel Herrera hitting up there and usually in the 2 or the 3 hole. 339 Woba, 132 ISO against right-handed pitching. He's a left-handed bat you can look at. The other guy is Ryan Howard, who is 1 for 5 with the home run against Syndergaard. But again, his average and his Woba and his power have all been declining. So again, not really a guy I'm looking to target, but if you wanted some bats, those would be the guys that you would go up against Syndergaard with. I do think Syndergaard's one of the better pitchers on the mound today. Price is a little bit high on him if you want to use him, but I definitely think he's going to have a good game here against a weak offense. On the other side of the game, we got Jared Eckhoff, who's actually been solid to start the year. Left-handed bats in the last 2 years have usually been the way you want to attack them. He's given up about a 270 average with a whip over 140 to left-handed bats. So the Mets should be in a good spot here, even though this offense is struggling. A guy like Granderson, 348 Woba, 192 ISO against right-handed pitching. Conforto is definitely somebody I want to look at. 372 Woba, 254 ISO against right-handed pitching. He's shown a little bit of pop in a good hitter's ballpark. They're getting a park upgrade going from, their home park at Citi Field over to playing the Phillies in Philadelphia. You also have Lucas Duda, another guy who should get a little bit of a power boost there. 369 Woba, 246 ISO against right-handed pitching last year. And then even Neil Walker, who they just brought on, is another left-handed bat, 347 Woba, 200 ISO. So I do think the Mets profile to do pretty well against Eichart here. He's been pretty good, and like I said, his last couple starts he's been okay. His last start he was really, solid, but they did go up against a very weak team there. So the Mets have not been hitting well, but I do think you can look at and stack up a bunch of these left-handed bats against them. Maybe throw Cespedes in there as well, and, you should be able to get some runs. Next game we're going to talk about is Colorado against Cincinnati. You got Jordan Lyles pitching for Colorado. Last 3 years, left-handed bats have been the way you want to attack him. The only guy that really stands out to me on Cincinnati is Joey Votto. I guess you can mess around if Billy Hamilton is batting in the leadoff spot. You think he can get a couple hits, get on base. I think they had a couple injuries, to the point where he might be starting now. So if that's the case, he's somebody you want to look at. But Votto's really the guy that you want. 395 Woba, 189 ISO, 7 of 11 lifetime with 2 home runs off of Lyles. So he's got good BVP as well, probably the BVP play of the day. So Joey Votto, definitely somebody in play, definitely somebody I want to look at. Good hitter's ballpark at home in Cincinnati. A lot of home runs get hit out of Cincinnati. So I think he could be in line for a homer today. Now, on the other side of this game, Alfredo Simon was slated to be the starting pitcher, but he's not going to be anymore. So this is one of those situations we were talking about. Dan Straley, former pitcher with, I think, Oakland and maybe even Toronto, if I'm not mistaken, is the guy who's going to be on the mound. He's given up about a 220 to 240 batting average to both sides of the plate. Left-handed bats a little bit better against him, closer to the 240 average over there. Whip in the 120, so not horrible, but not great. A couple guys I think I want to look at. You got Cargo with a 399 Woba, 304 ISO score. So, Carlos Gonzalez, definitely somebody who's going to be in play. Ben Paulson, who's been playing now that Charlie Blackmon has been injured and is going to be out of there. So, they're rolling out guys like Paulson and Parra who, are left-handed bats that can hit right-handed pitching pretty well. Neither one of them has a great Woba. Powers was a little bit better last year. They're both around the 360, 370 mark. ISO's around 200. So I think both guys are solid options to look at. Again, Cincinnati's a good hitter's ballpark. It's a place where a lot of home runs get hit out. So I do think some of these guys who do have a little bit of power are definitely in play for a home run. You could also look at, guys like Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Story's just been so hot to start the year that I guess you always got to put him in play. I mean, I'd rather take him obviously in Colorado, but he's been hitting home runs outside of Colorado too. The guy is absolutely on fire. His WOBA's 431. His ISO score is 500 to start the season here. So just absolutely monster scores. Of course, it's a small sample size. I don't think he's going to keep doing this for the rest of the year. I don't think he's going to end up with 108 home runs or whatever ridiculous number he's on pace for right now. So at some point, you got to figure he's going to cool off. But again, right now, he's hitting pretty well. So I think you got to respect that. And then Nolan Arenado, another guy, very good in righty-on-righty matchups, 370 WOBA, 270 ISO in that situation last year, going up against Straley, who's not really a pitcher that kind of scares me. So I do think that Arenado is another guy you can look at there as well. There's not a ton of guys at third base that I love today. So I think there are, there is a good case to be made to pay up for him. Next game we can talk about, Washington Nationals at the Miami Marlins. Jose Fernandez is on the mound for the Marlins, and he's been lights out to right-handed bats. Left-handed bats have actually done okay against him, a little bit of a higher average. The problem I have with Fernandez is he usually only goes about 5 or 6 innings because he throws a lot of pitches and strikes people out, and they're kind of keeping him. I'm not going to say a pitch count. I mean, I think he threw 90 and 104 in his last 2 starts, but if 90 and 104 pitches only get you through 5 innings, you're not going to get him going deep enough into the game to pay off the big salary that you want. Even if he does happen to strike out almost everybody that he faces in those 5 or 6 innings, like he basically has been doing, he's been coming up a little bit short of getting you that, 3x value that you really want in order to have a, solid chance to win a tournament with him on your roster. With that being said, there aren't a lot of guys that I think are going to profile well against them. One guy who actually does, though, is Bryce Harper. I think he'll go a little lower owned today going up against Fernandez, but he's got a 427 WOBA, 279 ISO against right-handed pitching, 3 for 10 lifetime with 4 base on balls against Fernandez. So that's an on-base percentage of 500. I don't think he has any home runs against him, so he hasn't shown that power upside. But again, he's been hitting them and he's been getting on base, and Fernandez kind of seems to pitch around them a little, so you can get a couple of those walks and get him on, hopefully score a run, maybe steal a stolen base or something there. I think his ownership's going to go very low because people are not going to want to go up against Fernandez. But like I said, Harper's actually been pretty good against Fernandez. 300 average, 500 on base percentage. Those are solid numbers, even though it is a small sample size. A good hitter against a good pitcher. I still think sometimes you can go take the good hitter, and he's still going to have a pretty solid game. If he does it at low ownership, he might be the difference maker that you need in a tournament. On the other side of this game, we got Tanner Roark that's pitching for Washington. Left-handed bats hit 299 against him last year with a whip of 1.48. He did give up 17 home runs in 110 innings to batters of all handedness, and I think it was pretty even, like 8 to righties, 9 to lefties, or 8 to lefties, 9 to righties, something like that, vice versa, one or the other. But 17 home runs, 117 innings. You're basically looking at about a home run every 6.5 innings, give or take a little bit. So that's pretty good. I think you can look at some of the bats, especially some of the guys with power on the Marlins. Now, that always means Giancarlo Stanton, if you're looking at bats with power on the Marlins. 378 WOBA, 262 ISO score against right-handed pitching. The game is in Miami, not an easy place to hit home runs in, but, obviously we've seen Stanton do it before, and, Stanton tends to hit no doubt home runs that would have been out of any ballpark. So if he gets a hold of one, he can definitely go yard. I also really like Christian Yelich today. He's off to a pretty good start. 346 WOBA, 127 ISO in the last 3 years. And he's 5 of 17 lifetime against Tanner Roark already. So he's seen him quite a few times. He's been able to hit him around a little bit. Pretty solid average there. So as long as he stays in the 3-hole, hitting in front of Stanton, he's going to see some pitches, hitting behind D. Gordon. Hopefully he gets up with some guys in scoring position that he can knock in with a base hit. Doesn't have huge power, so there's not a ton of upside, but I do like Yelich as a solid play in cash games. He's kind of like a poor man's Matt Carpenter to me. 2 other guys I think you can look at. You got Justin Bour and Derek Dietrich. They're not always starting. They're not even always playing, but if either one of them gets in the lineup, they're both big left-handed bats with a little bit of power that profile to do well against Tanner Roark. Both guys are 2 for 8 lifetime against them with a home run, so they've already backed it up a little bit with actual performance. So that's what we like to see. Like I said, I'm not a guy who is a slave to BVP. But if you have a guy who profiles to do well against a pitcher, and then you've seen that he has 6 or 8 or 10 or 15 at-bats, and he has done well in that small sample size against the pitcher, it's just something that kind of gives me a little bit more confirmation that, what I'm seeing in the numbers is something that, is actually translating to real life. And that usually makes me like a guy a little bit more. So if either one of these guys get in the lineup, I think they're worth it as some cheap flyers that you can take a look at. Next game, we'll talk about Chicago Cubs against the St. Louis Cardinals. You got John Lackey, who basically has been kind of tough on right-handed batters. Left-handers hit 271 against him with a whip of 1.44. So you obviously want to attack him with the lefties. St. Louis does not have much of a history against him. Not a lot of guys have BVP at all against him, any at-bats against him. So it's always tougher on I think it's always tougher on a lineup the first time they see a pitcher. So maybe Lackey the first time through the lineup might do pretty well here. But I think eventually St. Louis gets to him. They got a bunch of left-handed bats that I would be weary of. A guy like Jeremy Hazelbacker, who started the season off real well, 462 WOBA, 330 ISO, huge, incredible hot start to 2016 that he has right now. Hits up towards the top of that order in front of some of the bigger bats they have on the team. So I guess he's somebody that you got to at least respect and look at here, with Lackey struggling with lefties. Matt Carpenter, the biggest lefty that they have on St. Louis, he's a guy that usually leads off for him. 370 WOBA, 180 ISO. Again, he singles you to death. He walks you to death. He'll steal a base occasionally. He does have a little bit of pop that he showed last year, although I don't think he's going to get back to those numbers. I think last year was one of the better power seasons he'll have for his career. But he is a guy who scores over 100 runs every year, so he's always in play to score some runs. He can definitely get a hit for you with runners in scoring position, so he can get you a few RBIs. He's just a very, very solid 8 to 12 points every game. Again, not huge upside, not a guy I like to use in tournaments, but definitely for cash games, I think, Matt Carpenter is always in play. A guy who might have a little bit of upside, Brandon Moss, the left-hander, has been hitting fourth lately. He'll probably be hitting fourth in this game, too, against Lackey. So if you get a power hitter hitting fourth, left-handed batters do better against Lackey. I think that this is a pretty solid spot there for Brandon Moss. So those would be some of the guys that I'm looking at on the Cardinals. Randall Gierchuk in righty-on-righty matchups hits pretty well. So does Piscotty. This offense has been pretty good lately. So you can basically look at any of those guys if you really want to. On the other side of the game, we got Mike Leake pitching. And Leake gives up a 263 batting average with a 1.26 whip last year to left-handed bats. There's a lot of left-handed bats in this Cubs team. So I'm a little bit leery of how well he's going to do today. You got a guy like Anthony Rizzo, 390 WOBA, 192 ISO. Fowler, 384 WOBA, 139 ISO. Zobrist, 384 WOBA, 154 ISO. You also have like a Jason Hayward up there. I mean, quite a few left-handed bats. You got Chris Bryant, who's good power from the right side, good hitter in righty-on-righty matchups. It really doesn't shape up like it's going to be a very easy or a very good matchup here for Mike Leake. So just be careful if you're rolling Leake out there. I have a feeling that he could get knocked around a little bit today. And then a couple other games that we can talk about. Let's see. We got the Los Angeles Angels against the Chicago White Sox. Carlos Rodon is going up there. He's been lights out to left-handed bats, so I wouldn't really look at any of the lefties on the Angels. Not that they really have any good ones we want anyway. Right-handed bats hit 272 against them last year, though, with a 159 whip. The only guy that really stands out to me is Mike Trout. I mean, 406 WOBA, 255 ISO against left-handed pitching. This is not really a good offense for the Angels. If you want to mess around with Pujols, you can, but he's actually a little bit better in righty-on-righty spots. I mean, maybe you can look at like a Cole Calhoun, but he's a lefty, so that doesn't really fit here. Like I said, I mean, I'm stretching here to try to find somebody else to throw out to you. Maybe Escobar, who's not a horrible play, leading off for them if he's still up at the top of the order. But other than Trout, there's really not much I would look at in the way of bats. And, Carlos Rodon's a decent pitcher too, so I don't expect them to light him up. On the other side of this game, we got Hector Santiago. I know some guys hate this guy, but his numbers are actually pretty good. You talk to some, sabermetrics guys, and they'll get into the, fly ball rate and the hard hit rate and all that stuff. And this guy's numbers probably shouldn't be that good, but he actually had a pretty solid season last year. Basically only gave up about a 220 batting average to both sides of the plate. So, a stat that Josh Kalachi here likes to talk about with, BABIP, This is a guy that everybody says, his batting average on balls in play was obnoxiously low. Well, maybe that does have a little bit to do with luck. It might also have a little bit to do with the way that the guy pitches. So I'm still okay with Santiago. I don't love him, but I don't hate him as much as a lot of other guys that, dig deep into the numbers like I do. I think hate him. I do hate the lineup for the White Sox, though. So there's not like there's a lot that you can really go and attack them with. I mean, Jose Abreu, probably the best hitter they have in that team. He's good in righty on righty, also good against left-handed pitching, though. 374 WOBA, 211 ISO. Definitely somebody that's in play over the last 3 years. Avisail Garcia, 351, 152. This guy was, when he was with Detroit, they used to call him Baby Miggy, and I was expecting him to become such a good hitter, and he's basically just okay. He hasn't even really had a great start to this season, so again, like I said, I'm kind of reaching here for some of these bats. And then the other guy is probably Todd Frazier, 351 WOBA, 254 ISO over the last 2.5 seasons. He's just really off to a slow start. So those are the guys that hit in the meat of the order. They're the ones that actually profile to do the best against Hector Santiago, but we haven't really seen any of these guys really hitting all that well, other than Abreu that I would really want to target him. If I'm using anybody on Chicago, it's probably Abreu. And to be honest with you, unless I was stacking them up, I don't think anybody else would even come close to being in my lineups. Next game we talk about, Milwaukee at Minnesota. Chase Anderson pitching for Milwaukee. Left-handed bats 262, 136 whip. Right-handed bats 280, 124 whip. So you can basically target bats from either side against them. The problem is this Minnesota offense is one of the worst offenses in baseball. The guy who stands out the most on the numbers is Miguel Sano, 376 WOBA, 240 ISO, but he's hitting like 179 right now. I think he's on like a 5 for 37 slump to start the season. So really, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Minnesota's been the team that we've just been targeting pitchers against since the start of the season because the offense has been so bad. Like I said, I don't really love Chase Anderson, but I can definitely see the case for why somebody would want to start him because I don't really see any bats here outside of Sano. And like we said, he's not hitting all that well to start the season. So really, there's nobody that I want to target. Other side of this game is Phil Hughes. And I mean, I keep targeting him because this is a guy who, when you look at his numbers, he has a high home run rate over the last couple of years. Righties and lefties have both hit him okay. He's been, pretty much equal to both sides of the plate. So it's somebody that I like taking bats against, but so far this year, it hasn't worked out all that well. Milwaukee is another one of those teams that's really struggling on offense. They're targeting pitchers against them has worked out pretty well to start the season too. If you want to take some bats, I mean, the two guys that stand out to me, Jonathan Lucroy, 352 WOBA, 153 ISO, not bad. Ryan Braun, 345 WOBA, 191 ISO. I think Braun might have gotten banged up in the game the other day, so just keep an eye on that. Make sure he's in the lineup today. I don't want to tell you guys to play somebody and have him not be in there. But with Hughes having a high fly ball rate and giving up a lot of long fly balls, I do think that Braun is probably one of the better guys that you would want to target against him if you're looking to take any bats against Hughes at all. Like I said, he has been solid to start the season. So that brings us to our last game on the day, which is Arizona against San Francisco. Now, Jake Peavy's pitching for San Francisco. 2004, 2005. This is a guy that had reverse splits to right-handed bats. So I think the one you want to look at is, Paul Goldschmidt in a great spot here. 396 WOBA, 248 ISO, righty on righty situations. For the last 2 years, Peavy's been giving up an average around, just shy of 270, I think, to right-handed bats. So definitely want to have some shares of Goldschmidt in this one. The other guy I'm looking at, even though he's not a righty on righty to go up against Peavy, Johnny Peralta does hit very well. David Peralta does hit very well against right-handed pitching. He's a left-handed bat, 385 WOBA, 212 ISO number, hitting in the middle of that order right behind Goldschmidt. So those are the two guys that I would be targeting on this team if I'm targeting anybody. I guess you can make a case for a guy like Gene Segura leading off since, Peavy struggled more in righty on righty matchups. Socrates Brito is cheap if you want to throw him in there. Yasmani Tomas hit the home run yesterday. You'll probably have righty on righty Wellington Castillo catching. So there are options here, but like I said, Goldie and Peralta are easily my two favorite with, Goldie being head and shoulders as the guy that stands out just based on the matchup. On the other side of the mound, we have Archie Bradley, young pitcher from Arizona, and it's a small sample size, but he's actually had reverse splits so far to start his season and pretty bad ones too. Right-handed bats hitting 359 against them with a WOBA of 420. So you definitely want to look at the right-handed bats here. That pretty much says guys like Posey and Pence are going to be the ones in play. Posey's 362 WOBA, 152 ISO. Pence 349 WOBA, 191 ISO. So those are the two that stand out the most. Bradley, to me, is not a great pitcher. He is a big prospect, but he didn't look all that great when they brought him up last year. So even if you wanted to go with the left-handed bats, that means guys like Span and Panic and Belt. I do think that San Francisco roughs them up for a few runs here. Remember, Ruby De La Rosa had to pitch in that 14 or 15 inning game they had the other day. So that's why they're going to Archie Bradley in this spot. And I do have a feeling that San Francisco is gonna tag him for a few runs. The game is in San Francisco though, so I'm not expecting it to be very high scoring. It's not a great ballpark for hitters. But again, like I said, the right-handed bats definitely stand out based on the numbers, Posey and Pence. And I think you might even be able to get away with stacking up the lefties in there with him because his numbers in the minor leagues, it's not like he was lights out to lefties. I think it's just a small sample size that's kind of skewing the numbers here. But anyway, that wraps it up for the Benny's Bats edition. We've gone through each pitcher, kind of figured out what their weaknesses are and which bats profile to do the best against them. So hopefully you guys can take all that information and, figure out the right pricing and put it together on whatever site you're playing on tonight to make some money. So thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.